Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mark. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. It's a super exciting event for us to be a part of. My name is Michelle Carlson. I'm the editor-in-chief at Hyphen. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with Hyphen magazine, we're the only national print and online media outlet focusing on the kind of broad Asian American experiences at the intersection of race, culture, and politics. We've been around for about 13 years, continue to be an all-volunteer run organization, working literally on the ground, in the dirt, with our every parts of ourselves, trying to put stuff or kind of engage with independent media. This event has been in the works for many months, and we are so excited to be able to work with Mark and with the Asian Art Museum. He talked about his prayers being answered, but look at this room and this audience, it's our prayers being answered too. And so much of that is because Fresh Off the Boat is such an important and kind of significant cultural piece of cultural production in Asian American media. I don't think that we have had any Asian American family represented on TV, or at least network TV, for more than one season, one canceled season. So now this is season 2, so times are changing. But we're seeing it amidst a whole range of really interesting programs on TV and a kind of quote-unquote diversity of network TV. So we're really excited to be able to also have our esteemed panelists here today to kind of not only watch the show and support it, but also kind of get into the critique of what it means to have this sort of representation. So we're going to begin tonight with an exclusive advanced screening of the 4th episode of Fresh Off the Boat. Hopefully everybody's been keeping up to date, so you know what's happening. So this is Fresh Off the Boat, Season 2, The Fall Ball. Quick second to introduce our esteemed panel, even though all 3 of them don't really need any introduction. Facilitating tonight's panel is Jenny Yang, a Los Angeles-based writer and comedian who produces the first ever mostly female Asian American stand-up comedy tour, Disoriented Comedy, and has written and performed on the viral BuzzFeed videos If Asians Said the Stuff White People Say, and the Ask an Asian video series. We also have with us Kristina Wong, who's a performance artist, comedian, and writer. Her most notable touring show, Wong Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, looked at the high rates of depression and suicide among Asian American women. She's currently touring the Wong Street Journal, a laugh-out-loud interrogation of America's legacy on the rest of the world. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. And then finally, Jeff Chang has written extensively on culture, politics, the arts, and music. His first book, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, A History of the Hip-Hop Generation, garnered many honors. And his new book, Who We Be, The Colonization of America, A Cultural History of Race in Post-Civil Rights America, is a brilliant and necessary confrontation of the dynamics of race in recent history. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Jenny, Kristina, and Jeff.
Hey everyone, can you hear me? What's going on? Microphone check, you can hear me? Oh, there we go. Hi, how you guys doing? Good? Hella Asians.
Hella Asians. I think this is the most number of living, breathing Asians that have been in the Asian Art Museum.
Asian, yeah, Asian Art Museum.
Alive. Asians that are alive.
So before we get started in the conversation up here, we might, go back and forth between ourselves and you all. I just wanted to get a sense of the room. How many of you have been watching all of season 1? Okay, raise your hand. Yeah, raise your hand. How many of you, this is your first time seeing a Fresh Off the Boat episode? Raise your hand. Oh, okay, cool. Nice. How many of you remember the 90s? Okay, good. So that's good. I'm so glad this is officially the first time that we've really had a public conversation, right, in San Francisco with the Asian American community about Fresh Off the Boat. I've been so awesomely privileged to have been able to host similar community chats in Los Angeles, so I'm glad that I could be here in San Francisco. And I just want to plug for the future. We do this online streaming show called Fresh Off the Show after live West Coast viewing, so hopefully you guys can keep talking about it, right, after this event. But, so yeah, first reactions to the episode. I just want to throw out, this stuff got real, right? Just initial reactions to what we just watched.
I actually really dug Lewis and Eddie's relationship, how it's kind of developing. I mean, reminded me of the Sex Ed show, where you know, he was basically trying to lead Eddie through like this big book, and using all these metaphors, like, you know, it's like when you sneeze and it feels really good, stuff like that. You know, it was kind of like that. It was like the next level of that, and then also too. Jessica's relationship, like she has this weird tortured relationship with moms. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know, I could be stereotyping here, but I think, you know, a lot of Chinese American spouses have problems with their in-laws. And that felt really real, actually. I was almost like, ugh. My in-laws are amazing, but
yeah, totally.
They are. I think they might be watching.
Of course.
My husband made a cameo, Jeremy Lin.
Yes.
I almost ate the screen.
That's disputable, you know.
I made us a wedding page at thenot.com, and anything on the internet is real. So that's...
Yeah, so that's your initial reaction.
Spend an hour talking about this.
Yeah. No, so, I mean, I personally was, like, really struck, and I've watched every episode a couple of times by, well... I run it on Hulu.
You don't have a job.
I run it on Hulu, even though I've seen it, you know, while I do other stuff. But I was really struck by how heavy it got with the mom relationship. Like, honestly, that's like actually very different from most of the other episodes, don't you think? Like, and also what made this one different was. The last time I remember seeing that much Mandarin Chinese subtitled on like a complete pop culture unit was literally the Joy Luck Club. And that shit is hella old, okay? So like that's a long time, but that was from the 90s. And so, right, like when was the last time you've seen something American that was that much, like it's like they actually believe that Americans could watch and pay attention to subtitles while hearing Chinese. Imagine that. Yeah, so.
And then there's that scene too, even where they left it untranslated.
Yeah.
The key line, right? And that was kind of amazing, actually. I was like, oh, did they? Hey, that's kind of cool. So,
it never happens. It never happens. So, yeah.
Spanish, whatever, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also, maybe, are there any sort of awesome 90s pop culture references that you really enjoyed? I think Kristina was demonstrating the Shaggy dance. I definitely got some practice with that. You all know this one, right? Do we? Anyway.
We do it again. The word shaved in the back of the head. The tips.
Tips.
The tips.
Tips.
Right, tips. I don't know if you noticed this, but do we know about the starter jacket? Did you see the starter jacket?
Yeah.
This is Bay Area. Y'all know about the starter jackets.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was intense.
And the fact that his
so 90s.
His yellow shirt
with collars
went all the way past his hand, like all the way down there, because everybody would always buy like 2 sizes bigger than you actually wore, whereas nowadays it's 2 sizes smaller. So
yes.
Yeah.
I want to see the Jankos. Do you remember the Jankos? The Jankos were like the longest, whitest jean.
Yes.
/ cross colors.
Like the ankles were bigger than your waist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like ravers kind of got into it, right? The Jankos. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, good. We all know. That's good. So good. I just wanted us to talk a little bit about this immediate episode. But there's so many questions, right? There's so many issues. Why don't we just step back real quick? It's the beginning of the second season, right? And so why don't we just take a look? What's your reaction to how you felt about how the first season went? As an Asian American thinker and cultural critic. Go.
I've been liberated, everybody. There's no need for social justice anymore.
Yeah.
All my self-hate issues have been worked out through television.
Yes.
Commercially funded television has fixed everything. We can go home.
Awesome.
I'm kidding. I'm still a mess. But I think I'm still getting used to the fact that I'm like, they're still on the screen. Oh my God, they're still on the screen. Like it's weird, right? I keep thinking there's a hook that's going to pull them away, or that's going to move to the next door neighbors, and it's just going to be about their family.
Yes, right.
You know, I'm like, is this still? What? It's like someone handed you a present after you've been starving. And then
you can't believe it. You can't believe it. You're like, oh my God.
And you're trying to eat it as fast as possible. And yeah, it's hard. I have a hard time watching because I'm still just shocked that it's there.
Like they'll have like a spin-off show called The Honey Show or something.
Yeah.
Or the roller
just honey
skating
and her
women,
cleavage. Just honey and her cleavage.
Wow. Yeah.
It's a character, that's all I'm saying. Hey, sex positive. Yeah, keep going, Mom, keep going. Keep going, let's keep going.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing. And the other thing about it is, I think we were talking about this a little bit before, the ratings, right? I mean, so last year was kind of a banner year for TV, in that like it only took like 6 years into a black president's administration for TV to begin to catch up.
I know, I thought Obama was going to solve everything too, right?
Yeah. It took him 6 years to get to the scandal. And then...
An empire.
Right, an empire, right.
Empire.
But the numbers kept on going up for Empire, and the numbers like started high and stayed high for Fresh Off the Boat. And so that means like it's not just Asian Americans that are watching, which is a beautiful and amazing kind of thing, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, actually down in LA, Daniel Maeda, who works with a coalition that kind of tracks Asian Americans in media, he apparently he's like best buddies with Nielsen, and Nielsen gives him all these statistics, or he just reads the reports like I don't, right? These long PDFs. But Nielsen marketing ratings, apparently, they broke it down like subcategories of Asians. Like they didn't just lump us all together. Filipinos love them some Fresh Off the Boat. FYI, if you didn't know, now you know. Chinese, you know. But definitely across the board, Asian Americans, black folks love Fresh Off the Boat. No, totally. Like the intensity and degree and percentage of viewers who are black who are watching Fresh Off the Boat is like almost Empire level. Wow. Right? You know what I'm saying? Like it's like, and I love it because when we post about, you know, Fresh Off the Boat and doing our Fresh Off the Show post show, we have people who chime in and just like, they definitely love the 90s hip hop throwback aspect. So that's a huge part of it, right? The fact that hip hop in the 90s, a representation of blackness in a sense, right, is being portrayed, and a huge character Fresh Off the Boat. But I know, you know, it's like they're watching. And also, by the way, white folks are watching, right? So honestly, like you can't survive in this network television environment, even though there's so many platforms now, without also, you know, Midwest white people being like, let's tune into this interesting Chinese family. You know what I mean? Sorry, I don't know why white people talk like that. But that's how it just came out.
Sounded right.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, so, you know, definitely across the board, it's seen high numbers. And yeah, it's kind of interesting that way. Any other reflections? How about even before Fresh Off the Boat started? And I want to ask you guys to reflect on this too. Before you saw the first episode of Fresh Off the Boat, what were you thinking? How did you feel? Were you feeling any anxiety, some representation sweats? You know what I'm saying? Yes? What were the thoughts? Tell us your thoughts.
I was like, if they fuck this up, it's going to be another 20 years until I get a show.
Yeah, I definitely kind of felt the same way. You know, we'll be relegated to like the corners of cable TV for the rest of, you know, whatever eternity. Yeah. But it, you know, and it popped off, and it's interesting because even like when Eddie dissed the show, right, like in New York Magazine and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Have you been following that?
People even more interested in checking it out, I think. So yeah.
Can I give you my cynical Hollywood interpretation of that? Sure. Okay.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. That is...
for folks who aren't
yeah, so basically, Eddie Wong, who's the creator of Fresh Off the Boat, or the inspiration for Fresh Off the Boat, he wrote the book upon which the show is based, right? He's a chef, half Taiwan, he calls himself Taiwanese and Chinese. he was considered a creator for the show, and he used to do the voiceovers for season 1. But you notice he doesn't do it anymore, right? So there was a lot of things happening. The main thing that happened is in the run-up to the premiere of the episode 1 for season 1, he actually he dropped a New York Magazine article where he basically led you through. You had to go to the end of the article, right? He led you through his anxiety around having his life being super real in this memoir get translated into an ABC sitcom. Essentially, right? And in it, he has, if you know Eddie Wong's persona, he doesn't give a fuck, okay? Are you gonna bleep this? Because Asian Art Museum is like recording this. He don't give a fuck. It's artists, they can curse. Yeah, he did not give a fuck, right? That's his persona, and part of what he did, he named names. He's like, yeah, Melvin Marr, one of the creators who helped to make this happen, right? Who is an executive producer. He was like accusing him of essentially being like shucking and jiving for ABC. Like he used really harsh language to describe what the key players, right, who put this together. And then, but in the end, after describing all of the anxiety, he said, you know what though, now I understand this is how the sausage is made, this is how the game is. You know what, it's not the real representation of the fact that my dad used to beat our asses. It's not, you know, it's not about the domestic violence that happened in this home, right, that they struggled as a working class family, but it's an ABC show. Okay, so that's essentially the New York Magazine article. That shit got tweeted so much, and then, you know, people engaged him as a person, you know, in the post-mortem of it. Like, oh, so does that mean you're abandoning Fresh Off the Boat? People were reporting it like, oh, Eddie Huang is talking shit, he doesn't like Fresh Off the Boat, blah, blah, blah. So that's what happened. And
so what's your conspiracy theory?
My conspiracy theory is that he does not need to, he was like annoyed at the process of working on it anyway, but he's gonna get back end, which is like money from like getting syndication and the fact that the show is on anyway because he's the creator. So if he causes controversy and people watch it, shoot, who cares? You know, who cares?
But you have to go through like 2 or 3 seasons to get the syndication.
That's true, that's true.
So, I mean,
okay.
do that one up.
I know, oh, damn.
Sorry.
You're so smart.
I'm not.
Professor.
I'm really not. I'm really
He blew up my theory. No. Yeah, but no, that was a big part of it because he's not without controversy, right, Eddie? Do we need to talk about Eddie a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. We do. Because another thing that happened, here's the thing about, right, like the way that we have to respond to the media platforms these days is like, it's not just about critiquing the show. It's like he himself as a representative of the show.
And it's proof that he has no publicist or handlers
to
stop him from tweeting.
Yeah, so how many of you followed when he was on Bill Maher? You want to explain the Bill Maher situation? And he talked about, it was a comparison between black femaleness and Asian maleness.
Yeah, and actually,
it was weird.
If I remember correctly, he was actually talking about data that OkCupid had, and you did something on this, yeah? The OkCupid stuff?
Google it.
I'm on
You'll see a
OkCupid,
video.
yes.
Oh, okay. No. You did. Oh. Didn't you do a skit around this?
Oh, I was on the news.
It was a news.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So OkCupid did like the survey of like the least desirable. Supposedly, it was really unscientific. It was like 45 OkCupid folks. Said that.
You can't even dignify them with folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Users.
OkCupid profiles.
If anyone from OkCupid works at OkCupid is here, let us know later. Get at us later. I know it's Silicon Valley.
Yeah, no, but and so supposedly, Asian American males and black females were the least desirable.
Yes.
And Asian American women
are the most desirable.
And
why? We're getting free dinner later, ladies.
Double-edged sword. Double-edged sword. That's a whole other panel.
Okay,
That's a whole other panel.
Back to
really
Eddie.
is.
Back to Eddie.
But so he was responding to that.
So he was responding, or something came up, and Bill Maher said something about Asian American males, and he said, "Oh well, we're like just as shitty off as black females," and then this got to Twitter.
Yeah, man.
I mean, he really should not have put it that way. That was, and
he equated the experiences.
He equated the experiences. It was a false equivalence, and got hammered for it. I think rightly so. And
doubled down when he got called out on Twitter too. So,
and then I think disappeared around that for a very long time.
Yeah, it was harsh. It was
after
tough.
That, yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think that what that brings up is the fact that on the one hand, right, I as someone who grew up in the '90s who loved hip hop and like that I feel so connected with generally the representation of this Chinese Taiwanese American family, and I'm from Taiwan. But as also a feminist and someone who cares about other groups and how that gets involved, some critiques have come up, right? Including the role of hip hop and blackness as it's represented by this little Chinese as fuck face, right? How does that play out in the mainstream pop culture landscape? How do people read that? And also elements of, like, you know, young Eddie as portrayed in the show, discovering ladies, and sometimes some misogyny happens. Who knows? Who knows? So any thoughts about how you've kind of viewed that element in the show?
I think the professor should start, and then I'll...
Well, I mean, God, there's so much. There's the Caprice.
You wrote a book about hip-hop, brother.
Yeah. I mean, rap, so rap nerd. Yeah. And I think that helped, you know, like in some ways, like create this new stereotype, like the Asian American male rap nerd.
Yeah.
Me and some other folks.
Oliver Wang.
But it's interesting because Eddie has one of the best editors in the business, this African American guy named Chris Jackson. Oh. And I think that, like, if you read the book, it's really interesting. He's got this really poignant line that just floored me. It's one of those lines where you read it and then you kind of have to close the book and walk away for a little while. And I'm going to paraphrase it horribly here, but he said something like, you know, as a young Asian American, you're searching for a culture that you feel like fits you, and doesn't demean you, or you know, kind of suppress you. And so he was trying to express this angst that he had, I think, as a teenager. And of course, Asian Americans are in between, right? We're always in between black and white. And so the other poignant part, which I think was on the pilot, had to do with his relationship to Walter, the black student who
from the pilot,
who he has a big fight with in the pilot, right? And
Walter calls him chink.
Walter calls him a chink,
Yep.
and Eddie punches him in the face, and then they are like not cool for a while. But as part of that, Walter's like, "You're at the bottom now." And I thought that was like the realest, you know, moment in the entire first season, probably in Asian American TV history, which is admittedly very short, but it was real. I mean, that was very intense, and it was very real. And then, of course, they bond later over the Beastie Boys, which is a whole other thing. But he had this really poignant thing, which made me think a lot, which is that he didn't want to be down with the Asian Americans who were down with hip hop. They were down, in other words, they were down with blackness until they could get up with whiteness. And there's a whole section in the book that's about that. And you know, it's something that's very, very poignant. And I think that they've clearly, like, they have fans on the show. All the music choices I can't argue with.
Oh, so good.
They're really well done.
There's a Spotify playlist, by the way. I will retweet it later tonight by my friend, who's actually one of the editors on Fresh Off the Boat. Yeah, it's really well done. And you know, and the theme song sounds like Cypress Hill. Yes,
gets me all hyped.
Fresh Off the Boat.
Yes.
You know.
Right. Exactly.
Insane in the
and you know, and then they have these family moments where they sing Boyz II Men songs. It's just awesome.
Oh my God! Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
Did you see that? That shit was so good.
And that was the song that plays at all the graduations. All the graduations,
right?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
All the homecoming.
In Monterey Park and Daly City, yeah. So it's a really complicated type of situation, and I was really sad to see that whole Twitter blow up, because one of the things that came out was black folks accusing him of appropriation, and I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. So I don't know.
There's an episode where Eddie's cousin comes to visit, right? And they show he can't wait to see him because they're connected in their love of hip hop. But when that cousin comes, he's totally become all emo. Right?
He was I'm all about Nirvana and Pearl Jam now.
Yeah. And that was very real for me, because that's how I felt like I had to choose my childhood. Do I listen to white music or black music?
Yes.
And it felt like now I think the music industry has figured out if we get so and so to collaborate, we can make money off of everybody.
Exactly.
But
Taylor Swift and Kanye
in the 90s,
fuck it.
Yeah. In the 90s, it really was like this choice and this an identity. And I feel like in some of the stuff that I do, that especially Asian men have not a lot of models in terms of like what to follow. It's like you become a white guy or a black guy or an immigrant, like your father, and it's tricky.
I mean, I feel like as someone who grew up loving hip hop and identifying it with it so hard and making that choice, like, and you guys are in the Bay Area, so y'all know hella Asians in the Bay Area, like, for Fresh Off the Boat to depict actually something of a subculture that we've known in California forever, right? It's like, it's actually really, I don't know, it's like really, like, it makes me kind of like emotional a little bit when I first saw it, right? Because remember when America's Best Dance Crew came on MTV and then all of a sudden America was like, where the fuck did these Asians come from? Right? Right? You knew they thought that. You knew they thought that. But we grew up around them, right? So we're like, oh yeah, we knew homies who knew how to break dance since like elementary school. Right? Or like at colleges, that's where it came from. Like all these dance crews came from all the culture clubs and sororities and fraternities. So there's like a whole history that the rest of America didn't know about. And like they're now seeing the sort of mainstream fruits of it, you know, and the performance of it. Which I was like, it just blew my mind that like, wow, they're actually getting a glimpse into like my North High School in Torrance, South Bay experience. Oh yeah, oh, are you kidding? You know, there's like Legend Entertainment, you know, Legend Entertainment, like some originators of that 80s, 90s kind of like Asian American DJ crews in LA and stuff. And yeah, like, I was like, man, this is like so dope. Like, they get to like, they talk like me. Like, when I went to school out in Swarthmore, which is the first time I ever encountered a lot of white people, shout out to Swarthmore. They're like, who's this loud ass, you know, Asian girl who says dope? You know what I mean? Like, that freaked them out. Right? So, I don't know. It's just, it's a very full circle. It's very full circle for me to see Fresh Off the Boat. Oh my gosh. Anything else that we want to cover? Because I feel like maybe we could open it up to questions, right? I could talk forever. Can I just throw in one other thing to throw in there, okay? As someone who speaks Mandarin, I grew up with Mandarin Chinese as my native language. How many of you speak Mandarin Chinese? Okay, is it not weird that for the first time you see someone speaking in Chinese and it's kind of right? Right? That's just kind of right. And I'm like, oh, that's refreshing, you know, for them to get that shit right. And Grandma Huang, I have to be honest, the way she talks so much shit about white people, that's kind of honest. That's how my parents roll. Sorry, Mom and Dad, I'm outing you here. Like, right? She's like, anyway. So can we go to the audience? Do any of you just, if you have a comment, if you could just make it concise, but if you have a question, you know, throw it out to us, but feel free to make comments, because this is a conversation. It's not just about asking us. I'll pick and direct you. Mark, this green t-shirt right here. And then the next person will be that hand back there, okay?
Hi, I'm Charlotte. Grew up in SoCal, so
yeah.
all Asian. So I remember also hearing about Fresh Off the Boat about to be aired and also having that fear. And actually my fear was whether or not it would appeal to the non-Asian American communities. Huh. And I would watch an episode and actually ask a friend who was not Asian American to sit next to me. I was like, are you enjoying the jokes as much as I am? Because like you said, there's a lot of inside jokes in there that I'm Taiwanese too. And I was like, oh my God, Taiwanese tea eggs, I get it. You know, and realizing that you said that other like, it's a very, very diverse audience, and I find that fascinating how they balance that, you know, being able to appeal to people who get it, you know, get that culture, and also appeal to a wider audience. Yeah, no, point taken. I mean, on our Fresh Off the Show, we have a really awesome relationship with the show. So we actually, last season, it's archived on Angry Asian Man's YouTube channel. We had Nanachka Khan, who's the head writer and showrunner, and she spoke just about that, right? This idea, like, because Nanachka Khan actually grew up in Hawaii, like you. She's South Asian, female, and she talked about, well, what is this idea of how we can portray this family, not in a way where it's like how we need white people to understand them, right? Because what she said, which I totally agree with, is, aren't
aren't we as minorities used to like learning the code and language of another culture that's dominant and different from us? Why can't we assume that white people could do that too? Like, let's challenge them a little bit and stretch their imaginations and ability for compassion and empathy, right? To possibly understand that there might be a different set of cultural values that you could laugh about within that context. Like, and I was just like, yeah, man, preach on, sister. You know what I mean? Yeah.
One of the things I was going to say, and I wanted to ask you, because you had a really good point too in talking about Dr. Ken.
Yes, Dr. Ken. Do we know about Dr. Ken Jeong, right, from Hangover and Community?
So the interesting thing is you can already see that there's been a shift, right? Yeah. We were talking about this earlier, and I know Phil and you have been talking about it. I was at a Bruce Lee exhibition thing this past weekend in Seattle, and Phil and Perry Shen, who is an actor in Better Luck Tomorrow.
Better Luck Tomorrow!
Pioneering actor now in General Hospital. Where they were talking about like the number of leads now on ABC alone. And
His number is what?
It's something like 18 or something.
What? Right?
18.
Quantico, watch that shit.
That's almost enough for a charter school
Priyanka
classroom.
Chopra. Yes. So it's interesting because you were talking a little bit about Dr. Ken and how it's revolutionary in some respects.
But it's basically, I don't know, does anyone watch Dr. Ken? It's a sitcom. It's just like a lot of tropes of sitcoms. Yeah. And I was like, wow, white people could play this.
Yeah.
But they aren't. Right? Yeah. And that's the bar for our revolution.
I know. It's like, when we're talking about broadcast television, that's the bar.
In some ways it is, because when when you can cast Asian Americans in these roles that like whites owned for years, as opposed to casting whites in roles that Asians should have been in, right? Which is what the 90s were all
Emma
about.
Stone.
Right.
Emma Stone. No one knows about Emma
exactly.
Stone. Aloha. Oh.
Yeah, we won't talk about Cameron Crowe.
Okay.
I'm already getting uncomfortable. But like, I mean, isn't that that's a revolution in some respects, right?
They're just doing what white people have been doing. We're there. We.
Living.
Me.
Just
me and
living. Being a doctor, having a family.
Being real people. We're just people. We're white people. We're not white people. White people have always gotten to be people, and the rest of us have been ethnic.
That's right. Now we get to be people a little bit.
People.
A little bit.
So there's like 18 different versions of Asian American now in lead roles on ABC alone, which is kind of cool. But I also want to say, just to be a downer, because that's, whatever.
Let's do it.
Grunge style.
Let's be a downer.
The other thing to note is that the golden age of black TV was the 1990s.
Yeah.
And so you had this explosion of black television, especially after the Los Angeles riots.
Yeah.
And within like 4 years of that, it was all gone.
Yeah.
And so, and nobody could do anything about it. Like suddenly blacks were no longer on TV. Whereas like a few years before, you had like Martin, and you had Living Color, and you had New York Undercover, and all these shows. Living Single,
what?
You had all your Girlfriends. You had all of these shows.
So you're saying we have to have riots in order to get TV roles?
Asian
and it's
riot.
sort of happening now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there have been race riots.
We're having riots now?
Well, there have been riots, police brutality riots.
Yeah.
Right?
I was like, I feel like right here, right now.
I do feel like that level of dialogue, at least as I witness on Twitter, and then with the internet, there's just so much more space. I feel like the conversations that used to happen in Asian American Studies classes are now happening, at least on my Facebook feed.
Yeah, I think online, right? Maybe on YouTube.
And I do feel like that is, and now that there are like mobs that will go after people for doing racist stuff. For better or for worse, it has led to some of this.
Well, I definitely think that there's a link between what's happened with the Black Lives Matter movement and what's happened with on the campuses around race and microaggressions over the last 5-10 years, and where we're at now, with respect to where television is at. And I think that folks can't forget that like all these Hollywood liberals are reacting to these kinds of situations as well that are happening in the real world too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if the answer is more riots, but
No, right. Yeah, let's, I don't know if that's the answer, but that's, yeah, our next person. Yeah, please, your name and...
My name is Leo. I'm actually not Asian, but I've been watching Fresh Off the Boat religiously.
That's okay. I love that you felt compelled to say that.
Okay. You can stay.
He's like, I'm sorry.
It's hiding behind
I'm sorry.
When Fresh Off the Boat came on, I was really excited to watch it because it was packaged by ABC alongside other sitcoms as well that were supposed to represent, you know, the Mexican-American family with Cristela, and then also Blackish for the Black family. And some sitcoms, of those 3 sitcoms, some have obviously been more successful than others. And as a Mexican American, I was kind of sad that Cristela wasn't more successful, but I did feel that sometimes all 3 sitcoms had to deal with race in a certain way, and some of them dealt with it in a way that was more heavy-handed, I think. And I just wanted to ask you, if you've watched those shows or not, but just how do you think Fresh Off the Boat and these other shows have had to respond to the, you know, issue about race in ways that, you know, other white sitcoms haven't, and what's the kind of demand that is demanded of these sitcoms?
Go ahead, yeah.
So I think that a lot of these comedies got developed for 2 reasons. One was Shonda Rhimes' success on ABC. And the other...
Shondaland, baby, Shondaland.
Shondaland, yeah. And the other was Modern Family's success. So Modern Family kind of broke open the mold, and it was still very much a white family, but you had, you know, of course, the Sofia Vergara character, you had the adopted, you know, Vietnamese baby, and then you had a gay couple in it and that kind of thing. So they're like, oh, I guess we can do this. Like, other folks will watch this stuff. One of the things I wanted to raise was the question of class, actually, in this, because Blackish and Fresh Off the Boat, you're talking about very upper middle class families, right? Cristela was not. Cristela was like more of a working class family. And
Cristela's still on the air.
No.
yeah,
canceled. Okay.
It didn't actually. They actually waited a long time before not renewing too. I think they didn't want it to become an issue. But Jane the Virgin, right? Which is pretty awesome.
Jane the Virgin.
It's just, that's
I didn't
a pretty
think
awesome
that would. I never saw it, but the premise seems so crazy.
Yeah.
They managed to pull it off. They managed to pull it off.
And I think that the point that I'm trying to make is that these are still very middle of the road type shows. They're still going for the lowest common denominator in a way, right? Like Cristela was closer to a Roxanne type of show. Roseanne show. And it seems like there's only room for one working class comedy on TV, period. Yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to raise the issue of class in that regard, and say that it's easier for them to do upper middle class race shows that will get at race issues, and Blackish and Fresh Off the Boat have done it really, really well. But it'll be a real revolution when we start seeing, you know, cooks, right? Or factory workers, you know, or seamstresses and that kind of thing in sitcom roles.
But how are they going to sell Crate and Barrel if you don't have a lavishly decorated set? Who's next? Right over there. Okay, and then these 3 right here.
Hi, my name is Mei Yang. I have watched the entire show and love it, but there's one thing that's always bugged me, which is the thing, what's up with the accent? I mean, I know it's a really specific thing, but I also feel like there's a history that comes with it, and I noticed that with the dad, it sort of faded out. It was like, okay, I'm just gonna disappear on you and you're not gonna notice. Yeah. But with the mom, it's like, it's still there, it's a little bit less, it's fading in and out, and I'm just like, every time I hear it, it like jars me. So I was wondering what you guys think about that.
We had a conversation just about this beforehand. Yeah. And, I had a theory that got nixed immediately. And my theory was the accent was disappearing because they're really speaking Mandarin to each other. But in our TV world, we just can understand them because they're speaking English. That got nixed, this idea.
Yeah,
so.
no, they speak English. No, I mean, we had this conversation, especially after episode 1, right? The pilot episode. Constance, so I don't know how familiar you are with TV production, but when they order the pilot, they shoot it. And then it's like a while before they know that it's going to get ordered, right? And so there's a huge time frame between, let me try out this new character and let's start shooting the rest of the show. And so in the pilot, you literally can hear, and depending on like sort of what order they probably shot the scenes, the evolution of Constance's accent, right? Because she's trying to figure that out. And they know, I mean, she's been interviewed about it numerous times, and she talks about how she knows it's so loaded. She's an Asian American actress. She's had to do it, you know? And so my personal feeling about this is, I actually think if done in a way that's accurate, why not represent Asian immigrant parents who speak in an accent? Because why should we be ashamed of that? Yeah. That's my personal feeling. No, honestly, like that, because think about it. It would be fucked up of us to say, no, I never want to hear an accented adult because that makes me ashamed because they're making fun of us. And yes, well, that's loaded. But I feel very strongly about this as someone whose parents don't speak English that well. That like, you know, that is the reality of this type of family. And so why not represent that and be proud of it and still be, you know, understandable and comprehensible? That's just sort of my little 2 cents on the accent thing. But no, I feel like they've kind of decided, we asked Randall, I think, too, like about the accent. He's like, oh, well, I wasn't doing it that well anyway. So I just kind of, you know, pushed it aside. But Constance is a little better at it, I feel like. I don't know. I was saying, like, she kind of, when she gets angry, she yells in English how my mom would yell in Chinese. A little bit, like, I don't know.
And we were both saying, like, I feel like we all agree, I guess, that they were all getting better at their characters.
A little bit, right? Don't you think the accents got a little bit better, but you're still jarred by it even now? Yeah. There's always an issue, right? Whether there is an accent or not. I know, a lot of people reacted that way. They're like, why accent, you know? Okay, over there. There were 3 hands over here, so let's start with the second one right there. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, Mark, yeah.
Hi, I just have a really simple question, I guess. I just want to get your opinions on the relationship between Louis and Jessica. Because I was watching the show with my mom once, and she was like, you know, like Chinese people just are colder to each other. Because she also watches Modern Family, and she's like, there's so much more like a married couple on Modern Family. Like they are much more openly affectionate and, you know, like talk about sex and those things, which is just like a no-no in an Asian family.
So you, go ahead.
So I guess just like it's a pretty real like rendition of it, just like this daughter-in-law, mother-in-law thing was in this episode. I just want to get your insights on like what you think about that representation, and if it subverts it or if it's just more of a stereotype.
That's a really good question.
Okay.
That's a super good question.
Well, I would love to see more Asian on Asian lovin' on TV. Don't you? Wouldn't you love to see, like, you know, whether it's queer or straight, just like Asian on, just Asian flesh on Asian flesh sexiness, right? I personally I feel like Asian American sexuality is so loaded because like Asian American women, we're so overly sexualized. And so I actually really love that, like, you know, Jessica, as gorgeous as Constance Wu is, that like she's not overly done up with like Connie Chung makeup. Like, you know what I'm saying, right? Like, you know, like news reporter makeup. That like she's natural, but I would love to see more lovin'. But you're right. I mean, I feel like it does reflect the fact that like I've seen maybe my parents kiss once on the cheek.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can relate to that too from my family. It's interesting because when Eddie's writing in the autobiography, Eddie's talking about a situation in which they were constantly arguing.
Oh yeah.
And they just like they never like forget affection. They could even communicate.
Just yelling,
throwing
yelling plates.
All the time. Yeah, absolutely. So, but gosh, that's a really good question. I agree with you though. More sex.
More sex.
Yeah. More
I'll
But
be
like Asian on
I'll be a
Asian
body
sex.
double. Tell ABC. I'll be a body double.
Yeah, I
They need
mean,
to bring Jeremy Lin back.
I don't know there's an answer to
More
that,
scenes
right?
with Jeremy
But-
Lin.
They
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
And what's hard is that it's so loaded, right? Because one Chinese family could be like, my parents are affectionate. You know what I'm saying? And be like, that doesn't reflect my parents. It's hard. Okay, there was 2 hands that were already raised, right? Okay, so back here and then up here.
I'm just pretending like I know what you're talking
Yeah, that's great. Mark, you're great. This is great.
Hi, I'm Eddie. I also went to Swarthmore, so hi, Jenny. Hi, everyone else, but presumably you didn't go to Swarthmore, so. Following up on Asian loving, everyone should watch a YouTube video called Asian Pride Porn with David Henry Huang on YouTube. Just a
Old
suggestion.
school, Greg Pak.
My question has to do with something else altogether. It seems to me that as we enter this space in the mainstream with more and more representation, we're left this choice either to integrate with whiteness or to reject the project that is whiteness and all the baggage that comes with. So my question is, and it's very open, how can we better leverage our pursuit of representation in the mainstream to better support other communities of color that might be facing more material or even mortal threats to their livelihoods?
This guy.
Swarthmore!
This fucking guy. Swarthmore represent what?
The project that is assimilating into whiteness. That was so.
Yeah, but
that's
I mean,
huge.
I think there's you loaded your question a lot with a lot of sort of what your opinion is clearly. I think, which is right. Like, what does it mean to be a racial player on this landscape where we are not just Asians, but we are in relation to other groups? No, I feel like, and as someone who cares about being an ally, like. I don't even know if allyship is like a good way to put it, but like, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a whole other panel, homie. That like what it means to like embrace or reject. Because on the one hand, right, like everything's a double-edged sword. Every part of representation, we're like, yeah, hip hop culture, we love it. That we have an appreciation for it, and then it's like, no, you're appropriating it. No, you're disrespecting it, right? There's always that risk, I feel like it's the same with. I feel like that's the challenge. Like, as Asian Americans, we have to still learn the tough job of being allies if we care about the struggles that are happening to brothers and sisters who are not Asian American and not white. Right? I mean, I feel like that's just, it's a really open-ended question. I don't know if I can answer that. Strategies of support and...
I think this is a strategy of support, right? Here, we're watching television in a museum, and then we're doing...
Yeah, I don't know.
But then to make it legit museum-like, we're having critical discussion about it. But it's about creating community spaces that are centered around being of color, right?
Yeah.
And of color identity.
That's one element of it. I mean, I feel like any element of allyship from, I don't know, whatever I did at Swarthmore, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about Swarthmore student activism, But, it's like know thyself and know others as well, right? Like it's not only do we need to know about each other and have this kind of community space, right? But also to spend that time to know other people's struggle and their experience, so.
But I think it's also, too, like a really 21st century question. I mean, because, All American Girl, clearly the norm that they were pitching the show towards was whiteness, right? With Margaret Cho, and that was the criticism that Asian American audiences had of that. And I think that when you looked at the pilot, when people watched the pilot of this, I just remember Jeff Yang, whose son is Hudson, and he's a journalist. He's an extremely accomplished journalist that we get mistaken for all the time because I'm Jeff Chang and he's Jeff Yang. And there's another Jeff Chang who's a writer for this, who's not us.
With an I.
Either of
An
us,
I.
with an I, yeah. It's just a generic name.
I'm Jenny Yang.
Generic, yeah. So, but anyway, Jeff was on Twitter the next day saying, "Don't worry, Walter and Eddie are going to be friends." It was one of those things where, like, it was definitely like one of those things where people were taking away from this, like, oh wow, is this going to be an ongoing type of thing? Is this going to be 1992 all over again? And so what I think is interesting is we're still in this phase where it's like we're going to center blackness, we're going to center Asian Americanness, we're going to center Latinidad, like we're going to center queerness, you know what I mean? And the people haven't drawn the links.
Yes.
Except perhaps in Modern Family, but again, Modern Family through whiteness. So it's a very interesting period that we're in. And I think the question that you raise is exactly the question that all of you who are going to become screenwriters and culture producers are going to be dealing with in 5 years. Because we're not at that stage yet. Like, they still can't even understand why Empire and Blackish and...
Are doing well?
Yeah, they can't. I mean, honestly, literally last year, all of my friends in Hollywood who had anything like vaguely related to hip-hop, to black folks, to folks of color, were all getting their calls back where they hadn't been getting calls back, you know, for years. It was like Hollywood Reporter reported that Empire was like blowing up, and suddenly it's like they're getting their calls. And then you had these things like, oh, you have a black and Puerto Rican cast here. Can you make it all black and make the Puerto Ricans white? So it's still, you know, that's still the thing here. I mean, one of the things that came up over the past year, I was lucky enough to be on some panels with Justin Simien, and then with Justin Simien and
Dear
Spike
White People.
Lee.
He's a director of Dear White People.
Yeah, over at Stanford, and they just put it out there. There's no person of color to greenlight stuff at that kind of level. Yeah. Like there's zero. No black folks, no Asian folks, no Latino folks, like zero people of color to greenlight shows or movies at that level. And that's still, I mean, there's still a huge ceiling. So, you know, that's part of the resegregation of what's been happening here in the culture as well.
But just as a counterpoint to that, even though that's the fact, Fresh Off the Boat and how it came to be is actually a perfect case study of where, even though at the top level there aren't people of color who can make those like ultimate calls, that below that though, throughout the process, there are actually more and more Asian Americans in leading casting for ABC, leading, you know what I mean, comedy development, that all had a hand. Melvin Marr with Jay Kasdan's group that, you know, did
Courtney Kang, How I Met Your
Courtney
Mother.
Kang, yeah. So there are now seated, because we are now in this era where some people have some experience, that they're all kind of seated throughout the process. And if you take this as a case study, there are so many Asian American hands in it, right? Kind of leading it through and pushing it and saying, this will be okay. It'll be okay. You know what I mean? Like they have to be the ones to assure, like the fickle Hollywood taste makers, this will be okay. People will watch this.
The white
this is
people
gonna be
whisperers.
Great. Yes. Yeah. This will be great. Don't worry. I'll tell you where the good dim sum is. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know. That's sort of our little reflection on that. But thank you for that great question. We have this person up here who's been raising their hand up here. Right here, raise your hand. Blue shirt. Right here, raise your hand, please.
Thank
yes.
you.
And then back there, we had a couple. Raise your hand. Okay, so orange shirt and yeah. Okay.
So hi, my name is Mia. As one of the co-founders of Hyphen, I feel like I've been like pretty immersed in Asian American media. I live in the Bay Area. I live in my own little bubble. And I'm sort of wondering, because you are all immersed in that world too, I feel like in your own ways, what do you feel like the tipping point is for going from 0 shows to 2? I feel like you just spoke about that a little bit, but also within your particular fields, as artists, as educators, people who travel all around, like, is there also a different tipping point that you've noticed?
Christina?
For me, I mostly make live work, and then my TV stuff has only come because white people fuck up, and then I get brought on as a commentator to talk about it. So I would love to be brought on when, like, in a way, I rely on white people fucking up for me to get TV appearances, and so please keep doing. No, I don't know to remind them, but like, you know,
white
like,
people, please keep fucking up. Is that the?
No, but yeah, that. So it'd be great if that is not the only reason why I am on television talking about that, but also if I'm not being brought in as part of any diversity initiative, I'm just being brought in by the cultural programmer.
Yes.
And which is happening. But I know for a long time I really relied on the mercy of the Asian American Student Club at this small campus to take a chance on me. And I felt sometimes like a crazy person on that campus. And now I'm seeing the same sort of politics that comedians and artists that were performing in a small room on a campus are now. I'm seeing it like on BuzzFeed, or I'm seeing it's not we're not nuts anymore. Like this is now becoming sort of a part of a rubric, hopefully for the world, so that we can move on to the next chapter. Like for me, my new show is about making a rap album in Uganda. I'm not probably going to have a TV show soon about this. I have pitched it. It hasn't been picked up. But like I would, I'd love it where we can just move on to that next chapter and not constantly have to introduce ourselves to immigrants to this country. And not that it's a bad thing, but I still feel like we're still at that chapter where we're saying, hi, welcome, I'm not scary. I'm okay to watch.
For me, I guess publishing would be my thing, right? Like, shit. I mean, there's like, I can't think of, I know of one amazing Asian American agent. I don't know of any Asian American editors anymore. Like one of the Asian American editors was like kind enough to think of me when he was thinking about trying to get a Bruce Lee biography written. So
what?
Well, I mean, it might just be because there was nobody else out there, and part of it is that it's like there are just no folks there. There's no infrastructure like there is even like with TV to be able to make that happen. So I think the tipping point may be pretty far off. But then on the other hand, like it might just take, well, I don't know. I mean, Eddie's book was really successful. Yeah. It was a New York Times bestseller, and I haven't seen a rush to sign like Asian American memoirists or hip-hop Asian American writers or anything like that, you know what I mean? And I came in like, shit, I came in 15 years ago. Yeah. So, I mean, between my book getting signed in 2001 and then Eddie's book coming out in 2013 or something, or 12, like, yeah. So publishing is a little bit more of a different thing, which is really weird and fucked up because there's so many underemployed Asian American literature grads right now. Raise our hands. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, so, yeah.
I mean, that's the tough part, right? Because it's not that we don't exist. It's not like we as Asian Americans aren't creating stuff. It's just that for whatever reason, there is this platform, in capital P platform, where people who can make decisions and put money into things will only recognize certain people. And there's this element that if we don't have enough of a critical mass, there has to be an exceptionalism rule to it, right? Like Eddie Wong is probably an exceptional character, and so maybe they don't think of him as someone who is connected with a community where we could also drive interesting stories, who can also talk about themselves in an interesting way, right? So I think for us, I'm seeing as someone working in comedy as a stand-up mostly, and then working in some of the sort of internet field, working with BuzzFeed and doing ISA TV talk show, that there is starting to be a connection. But here's the thing, you guys, and I know that this is the same conversation that has been happening forever, because there have been people who, before the internet, who've been making shit, who are Asian, right? That we've only been able to accomplish anything when we've organized ourselves. Right? When we form shit like the Asian American Writers Workshop, when we form shit like Bindle Stiff, right? When we form shit, like, we have to fucking organize. We have to lead ourselves into it. Ava DuVernay is beautiful because she, as well as Oprah, because it's really helpful to have an ally like Oprah, but their shit is organized, right? They are talking to Justin Simeon, my friend Naomi, who is the only, I think the main Asian American character who had 2 lines on Dear White People. She tells me so much about how Justin Simeon, all of those folks, young black folks, are like making beautiful art and supporting each other. They're doing writing groups. They're like casting the actors they know to read that shit and improve it and they have a hashtag, you guys. They have a fucking hashtag. We need a fucking hashtag. Right? Their hashtag
hella
is,
Asians.
What?
Hella Asians.
Hella Asians.
Hella
Starting
Asians.
it today.
Right, yeah, let's just call it Hella Asians. Because they have a hashtag Black Excellence, okay? And they're connecting with Ava DuVernay, director of Selma. Like, we need to organize ourselves. So honestly, and this is not to, but I organized a comedy festival in LA that's essentially an Asian American comedy festival. 14 different shows over 4 days. We had 1,000 people go through in and out of all of these shows. And it was sketch, stand-up, written, right? And we only want to expand it because we need to have I don't know about Asian excellence. I like hella Asians, but that might be Bay Area specific. But I'm saying, like, we need to organize ourselves. So how many of you in here are writers? Raise your hand. Okay, great. How many of you are filmmakers? Okay, how many of you just do art or do creative work in general? Graphic design, I don't give a fuck, come on. That shit's art. It's commercial, but it's art, right? So I'm telling you, like, why don't there's so many fucking Asians in Silicon Valley and here. We need to organize these tech fuckers to connect with the creative fuckers and to be like, let's come up, you know what I mean? Let's come up, and not just come up because we happen to be coexisting because we're coworkers or whatever, right? Because there's so many of us and we're just used to seeing each other. Let's like have this conversation. I could go on, I'm sorry. Woo! Yeah.
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes left, but we can go maybe, yeah, let's do, raise your hand if you have a question. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do it quick, really quick.
Okay.
The people who did those questions, hands, let's do it.
Hello, I'm Steven. Quick question. Why do you think All American Girl failed where Fresh Off the Boat succeeded, and why did it take 20 years for another Asian American show to appear?
There was no internet to organize us all. I think that show was not as good. It was like, I think Margaret lost control of her show. And I think because that failed, it was like white panic, where they all said...
White panic.
They said, we can't... We gave you a show, it failed, why would we try to do this again? And
that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well-worn history with why that failed, but it is the potential tipping point, right? The next person's right behind you, Mark.
Hello. I was just curious about your guys' take on Randall Park's character in the show. I listened to an interview with him and Eddie on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he mentioned that at least the way he wanted to portray the character was, less goofy, kind of that dad comedic kind of role, and obviously, especially just differing from the actual dad, in real life. But I mean, watching the show, he does kind of play that role, and especially in the light of Eddie's, comments about Asian males. I was wondering what you guys thought about Randall Park and how he, how he is and how he portrays Asian males in the media through his character.
Yeah, go ahead.
It basically fits the sort of bumbling patriarch kind of character archetype that you see in sitcoms, which is sort of, like married with children, right? Is like, to use an 80s, 90s reference, is like, the kind of classic kind of thing. Dude on Modern Family, same type of thing. And part of the reason I think Eddie hated the show is because his dad's a G. I mean, his dad was a dude who would like slice people up with cleavers in the street. He like ran the hardest gang in Taiwan and stuff. So he's like, that's not my dad. That's not me. But
that wouldn't be ABC either.
But that wouldn't be ABC either.
Yeah.
ABC Family.
Yeah, that would be
ABC
HBO.
Gangsta Family.
Right.
Showtime, IFC. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's part of the complaint, and that's the reality of how the sausage got squeezed into this casing that is ABC. So I don't know what else to say. And then also Randall, because he was probably the most prominent, comedically proven actor, he was one of the first people cast. Right, and Randall's essence, as much as like he used to be a rapper and all these things, and like his essence is so lovable. That's a huge part of his vibe too, honestly, right? I mean, you know him personally too.
I know him from college.
Yeah,
I was in his college theater company.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so that's also just a nature. I feel like a nature of sort of the actor, but Yeah, we are waiting for a broadcast level portrayal of a G level Asian American male, right? I don't know where we can find that. Okay, next person. We had 3 here, real quick. Comments or questions? Almost out of time.
Okay. I just have a question about, to go back to the TV really quickly. It's been really interesting to see in the last 5 years these family sitcoms about racial identity and creates a bigger conversation on the internet about microaggressions and things like that. And then I've noticed too lately on some dramas, especially with ensemble casting, there are more minorities and more diversity. But there hasn't been a show like Friends or How I Met Your Mother that has colorblind casting yet. Do you guys think that that's on the horizon, that we'll get there? Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate all these conversations about identity and microaggressions, but I'm also wondering if in the future there's just gonna be like a regular show about 30-somethings in some urban city that has a diverse face, but it doesn't have all those things in there as well.
Well, that's utopia.
Like, the taboo in that, inherent in that, is sex, again. And interracial relationships to be completely real. Yeah. I think. So I think that's part of, like, that's part of the hump that folks need to.
He said hump. More Asian and Asian fucking is what I'm saying. Okay, we're back. I wasn't back to that. Okay, just kidding. No, but for real though. Yeah. Keep going. Sorry. Yeah. Oh, next question? Okay, next question. Sorry. I mean, I don't know if we really can answer that. Like, yeah, I want to see an ensemble cast, but like that would assume that like people want to accept a diverse group of friends who might be kicking it at a coffee shop all the time.
And screwing each other.
Jumping
in and out of each other's beds, yeah.
So I'm wondering if you think that there could ever be an all Asian American cast that isn't an immigrant family, because I'm 4th generation. I can still speak Cantonese. But I don't see portrayals of multi-generational Asian American families or Latinos. And I feel like that's an important portrayal. I also want to point out that Bruce Lee actually did a really interesting, when he was doing the screen test, he was saying, fuck Hollywood, you want me to do this accent and all stuff. And a lot of people don't know that Bruce Lee was born in San Francisco, California. So he really bucked that kind of white portrayal that was forced upon Asian Americans. And then I want to say, back in the, I feel like I'm more grandma age, but back in the 60s, if you look at I Spy, Helen Funai played a CIA agent. So she had meaty roles. Bachelor Father, Sammy Tong. John Forsythe said, I want Sammy Tong to have the exact same number of lines because he's my co-star. So I think if we have more actors speaking out who aren't ethnic, it might make a difference.
Yeah, but just as a fact, Dr. Ken, Dr. Ken's portrayal is that I guess he is born in the States as a character. His father is Korean, but Suzy Nakamura is playing a Japanese American. So it's Korean American and Japanese American couple, and so Suzy presumably, is also,
She's
maybe
a therapist.
at least a sansei or whatever. Yeah. I think our last comment right here.
Yeah, I had a question. In your experience, for different races to come to the mainstream pop television, does it always have to be comedic to start off? I really want to get into the talks of like how Asian Americans are disciplined at home, why we don't often express I love you to our family members. Like, I want to start getting in that direction, but it seems like it's always starting off from a comedic perspective.
Do you write?
I am a writer, yes.
Yeah, that means you're going to write that, right?
I want to.
Literally just declared it to a big old room of Asians that you need to be writing that shit.
I want to, yes. It's more so that I want to have that conversation with my own family.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to talk about unless it's being received by enough people.
Yeah. I think that's our task, right? It's like, it's our task to organize ourselves. We can't just wait for other people to fucking choose us. You know, and what's, going back to the question of critical mass, I want to say, as someone who, I've gotten a lot of work because of BuzzFeed, honestly, doing a couple of videos for them. And it's because the power of the internet is still so dope, and Asians are coming up in the internet. And so people who are performing live are like myself, have connected with internet folks like Wong Fu and other, Anna Kana, like, you know, we're coming together. And so if you know that you can't sell a very slow play about Asian Americans and doing dramatic things, put it on the internet. I don't know, you make that artistic choice. But I'm saying, like there's so many opportunities for us to make shit and have people see it. And so if you have something to say, just do it, right? There's literally no excuse anymore, right? Can I just throw that out there as a conclusion? Yeah. So Mark, I don't know how you want to end this, but just thank you so much to Hyphen and Asian Art Museum, and thank you all for coming, yeah.
Round of applause, thank you so much.